It's the Friendly Fire Show, episode 148 for the end of November 2019. I am Steve Wright from Stevivor, and with me...
Ben Salter from Stevivor.
Or Stevivor.com, or however you want to rock with it, because who knows. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I didn't just come back from London, so I'm relaxed. I haven't been on the Whirlwind World Tour that you've been on.
It's been a week and a half. I'm good. I was literally in London for 26 hours, and it took 30-something to fly each way, so that was fun. But as hopefully people noticed, we had a chat with Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, in London, and that's why I flew there, and it was definitely worth it. But we'll save that for later. I want to talk about our last big review of the year, really, and it was yours. It was your baby, Ben. Or, Ben, it was your baby Yoda.
Well, except there is no Yoda in this game. That's you've crossed your wires there. Different Disney product.
That was too good to not to do. Like, I had to do it.
It's topical.
We're talking about...
I've not actually seen that yet. I've not seen The Mandalorian, so I don't
get the joke. Oh, man. Okay, well, that's like one thing off the podcast run sheet probably crossed off. But we'll see how we go.
I will watch it. I haven't got there yet.
Well, let's talk then about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which was yours. So I'll leave you to kick it off.
This I have played. I played a lot. So basically, what did I say again? It's been so long ago since I reviewed this. I believe I said it's basically a mixture of Uncharted for its set pieces, Dark Souls for its combat, and Metroid for its exploration. So all of that in a Star Wars skin, and that's basically the easiest way to look at Fallen Order.
Yeah.
A lot of people get put off by the Dark Souls comment. It's more like a light version of Dark Souls. It's nowhere near as hardcore, but it's built on the same type of, you need to learn how enemies move. Combat's more like a puzzle than straight up combat. You can't just Assassin's Creed it and smash, attack and wait for your enemies to wait their turn patiently around you. They'll attack and they'll all attack at once, but they do attack on a pattern basis. So it's all about learning that. Knowing when to counter, knowing when to block, knowing when to make your move. But unlike Dark Souls, this did not frustrate the hell out of me. I actually enjoyed it. And I think each time you die, and if you don't play on easy, you play in any other mode, you will die a lot, but you will learn what you did wrong and how to do better. And I think that kept me playing. So I don't know about you, how you felt about the combat. That's probably the main thing people are talking about.
I think you're right. I kind of approached it in the Witcher 3 mentality of I played The Witcher 3 for 60, 70 hours, probably more than that. And I played it on easy combat difficulty because I just wanted to immerse myself in it. And I think I played probably the first 2 or 3 hours on the second difficulty level, which was the Jedi.
So that's what's recommended.
Knight. Yeah. And I was doing all right, but there was a couple times where I was just bashing my head against a wall. And I'm not a Dark Souls guy either, so I was kind of just getting a little bit pissy. And I found that if I, put it down to maybe the easiest setting for a little while to get by, it worked well. And then I kind of just left it on the easiest setting and was quite happy continuing on from there. And for the most part, the game wasn't overly easy. Sometimes you kind of just sail through. But that kind of made it a Jedi lightsaber fantasy for me. And I was okay with that. You sometimes feel a bit overpowered, but as a Jedi, you almost should feel overpowered sometimes. So I get people playing it on harder difficulties. I get people playing on an easy. If you play it and you're not liking the combat, just slap it to easy. It's still not a cakewalk, but it's still very enjoyable. And since I got back from London, started and finished it. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I'm going to say. That's all I did occasionally to get through one quick that I just could not be bothered doing. Only one guy in particular, but he's quite late, so I won't spoil it. The rest I played on Jedi Knight, and I think that is how you should play it ultimately, because most Star Wars games, like The Force Unleashed, you are this super powerful kind of apprentice who just destroys pretty much everything. And this, you're a guy who was cut off from the Force, you can't remember your training, you're not meant to be that all-powerful Jedi. So I think they kind of made it work story-wise as well, why you're having trouble against this 3, trooper team. Which is something other Star Wars games haven't been able to do, at least while you're a Jedi, because it didn't make sense otherwise. Why did you have this challenge? So I think they got a good mix there. But why I really liked it was kind of the world and the exploration. So it reminded me a lot of Control,
Yeah.
in that you have to figure out where to go yourself. And it's very Metroid. Probably Metroid Prime is what it goes back to for me. The map is like exactly the same as what they did then. And it isn't easy. So it's not really an open world, but it does have different paths you can take. And you really need to kind of pay attention yourself to figure it out. So it's yet another game where there isn't a big waypoint, and I really like that. So yeah, it's probably my favorite part of this game.
Oh, big time. It's so much fun to explore and find the little things that BD1 can scan and get the little snippets of lore. So this is between 6 and 7. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
3 and 4.
Oh,
3 and 4.
sorry. Yeah, I always get the stupid 6 and 7 chronologically in
Yeah.
real time release date, but yeah. So the Empire's just no. See, my Star Wars is all confused right now. There's too many things happening at different times.
So this is 5 years after Episode 3, after Order 66, when the Jedi were purged. So there's
Yes.
pretty much none left. So that's why he's managed to survive, because he's cut himself off. It is about 15 something, 14 years before A New Hope, in that period. So the Empire is a thing.
And it seems like, and like not getting rid of any, like not spoiling it, like it seems like this could be, because there's such a long period of time between when this finishes and when the movie kicks back in. Like, if this does well enough, Respawn could just take this and make it like a multi-game franchise.
You could have a sequel easily.
And I'm fine with that.
And so many games put their, or at least since the early 2000s, put their story in this period, because there's a 20-year gap almost with nothing told. So you can kind of make up whatever you want and put it in there. So it works pretty well. It's a big galaxy, apparently, although everything is linked to the Skywalker family. If you ignore that, it should be a big galaxy. Yeah, so I don't mind the story. It's very B-side. Like it wouldn't make anything major Disney's doing now, but I think it's interesting. Like you mentioned BD1 before. I think his relationship with Cal is pretty cool. It's kind of like having a little dog at times.
Yeah.
So it's very different to what you get in the movies. It's not super serious, but it's
Well,
interesting.
I really enjoy all the characters. So there's Deborah Wilson is Seer, Cere, Seer.
Yeah,
She is connected to the Force in some way. She was on Mad TV, and so I could recognize her face and voice instantly. She was also one of the Resistance fighters in the Wolfenstein series. Just picture her with a giant fro instead of some close cropped hair. Grease is the pilot of the Mantis, which is the kind of Millennial Falcon ripoff that you ride around in all game, and he's quite enjoyable. And it's a cool. It does a really good job of hiding loading screens. So if you need to go to a different kind of area on a planet, you'll kind of go through this narrow opening, and you'll watch Cal kind of squeeze through little bits and pieces, and like by a certain point, like that's when it's loading new bits of map.
Yeah.
But even like traveling to planet, you're on this little ship called the Mantis, and it will just kind of put things in hyperspace around you, and the characters on the Mantis will have these little kind of interactions, which really are just time fillers, but they're also kind of filling in, bits of character and, helping you bond a little bit as a crew. And I think that all worked really, really well. Like I ended up really caring about these characters. And like they're kind of carbon copies of like, oh, like that's the Wookiee equivalent, and that's like that's the Han Solo kind of guy, and you're supposed to be the Luke character, but it fits really well, and it's Star Wars, so you're kind of trying to like live the Star Wars fantasy, and I think it kind of hits all the right notes as it goes through it.
Yeah, and it is very Tomb Raider as well. It's probably the other one we didn't mention.
Yeah,
because first of all, you raid several tombs. And you also spend a lot of time climbing. So if you thought Lara did a lot of climbing and vine swinging and all that, Cal does just as much. So I guess that's kind of Jedi-y. I think it works pretty well. We've kind of decided that type of thing works well for that action-adventure game to break up combat. Uncharted and Tomb Raider do it very well, so there's nothing better to copy from that point of view. And I think the balance is pretty good. I think they had that. The exploration and the backtracking, if you want to do that, there's heaps you can go back and find, but you could ignore it if you don't care about the lore at all. And then the combat as well. So I think it's rounded out pretty well. And I think that's why most people are really enjoying it, and it's generally quite a favored game.
Oh yeah, I'd take this over a Battlefront in its current form anyway. Like, I like the old Battlefront games. I'm talking about the two new ones that EA's put out in the last couple of years. Leaps and bounds better, not tied to microtransactions or, like dodgy multiplayer netcode. It's just like a tight single player experience where like I started playing it trying to beat jet lag coming home from London and got so sucked in. Like, I've got 1,000 gamer score on it because I was like so wrapped and I wanted to finish the story and I wanted to explore all the places and fill in the lore gaps. And it's like, it's not a super easy game to finish completely, like for trophies or achievements, but it's also not hard. And I like that. Like, it's engaging and you want to keep going at it. It doesn't feel like a slog, which is the best thing I could say about like an achievement hunting style game too. So the only thing I can say is it's really a shame that they gave us code just after all the Game Awards stuff finished, because I think I had Death Stranding for maybe like 2 weeks, a week and a half at least, by the time the nomination process went through, and at least I could comment on what I thought about it. And like the rest of Stevivor, hadn't played it obviously, but they kind of took me for my word, so thanks guys. But when it came to Jedi Fallen Order, I think we had maybe an hour of preview time with it before the nomination period had closed, and EA's marketing team said, like try to base your nominations on that hour, where like, all the marketing for Fallen Order looked pretty garbage, if I was being honest. Like, especially the E3 presentation where they needed to do the extended cut later on to make it feel better. You couldn't base a nomination on an hour worth of gameplay. Whereas if I'd finished the game and had the chance to nominate it, I definitely would have. So like, it's missed out entirely on nominations, and I think it's just because of timing, which is a shame.
That's a shame. It is a shame, but Pokemon have the same thing. So they were on the last day of nominations. Anything up until the 15th of November could be considered. That's when both came out. And we didn't have either. And I think a lot of people didn't have either. So yeah, there's nothing we can really do about that. It's probably not that much that the developers probably wanted it out there, but they weren't done. So yeah, it's just it's a timing didn't really work out for it.
Yeah, and I guess you are absolutely right in that I don't think Pokemon did too well either in the nominations. I'm trying to go through the list now.
Did not get any.
And I guess there's
never mind. This is yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that Respawn have had 4 games now, and they're all 4 hits. So, and this year they had Apex and Fallen Order, so double hit.
Yeah.
We know they're doing very well. They may not get an award for it, but I think as a studio, they're getting a lot of respect at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and like, I kind of feel bad for Respawn because they go from game to game to game that are all really, really good and really critically received. But you look at something like Titanfall or Titanfall 2, and like the marketing never quite it wasn't the levels of hype that EA usually put around a game, and they've not done that well sales wise. Apex has broken that trend where Apex has done really, really well regardless of whatever EA does around it. But I kind of feel like this got the same kind of treatment. Like, it could have been marketed much better. It's still doing really well in terms of sales and stuff. I can't remember what EA said today.
A big Christmas spike. I think you'll have, a new movie's just come out. It's a type of game people would buy as a Christmas gift. So I think it may not have great day one sales, but I think it will do well over the next kind of 2 months, which is probably what they want.
Yeah, it's just astounding that EA couldn't like hit this out of the park entirely. Like, it's a decent Star Wars game, and I feel like people aren't that excited for it because maybe they've been burnt by the last 2 Battlefront games. It seems like things aren't connecting, and it's almost a no-brainer to
Possibly.
me.
Well, unlike the Star Wars movies, it's been a long time since we've had a single-player Star Wars game. So I think people are a bit fatigued over having a movie every single year. But we haven't had a single-player Star Wars game. I can't even remember the last one. Like Focus, so forget Battlefront 2.
It would have been Force Unleashed 2, wouldn't it? Maybe?
Yeah, probably. So that was like 2011, maybe? 2012?
Yeah, a while ago.
So yeah, long time.
Do you have tickets for Rise of Skywalker?
I do, actually. Not midnight. So I did see The Force Awakens at midnight, but I'm too old now, I've decided. So I'm going at 6 p.m., a reasonable time.
Nice and respectable.
Yep.
We're in Albury for Matt's master's graduation, so I don't think we're seeing it that first weekend. And I'm kind of worried that there's going to be giant spoilers, so I'm going to try to stay off the internet. And it's close enough to Christmas where I feel like I can do that.
You've got to see it first day, is my opinion. The type of thing that will get spoiled immediately, so I'm not taking any chances.
Well, in the same vein, I guess, The Mandalorian, if you haven't heard about Baby Yoda, you have been under a rock. You haven't seen it yet. I've only seen one episode of 3. Not that into it, if I'm being honest. It kind of seems like a fan film. It's like, here's some cool things that we took out of Star Wars and chucked it in a TV show, and I'm not sure if we're supposed to like the main character or supposed to hate him, or like it's kind of sketchy. But apparently people who have watched all 3 episodes as of recording date, maybe there's 4 now, I don't know, say it gets better, but it's still pretty divisive in terms of people really liking it or really hating it. So I'd be keen for people to tell us what they think in comments and stuff. But that's my exposure to Disney Plus, and I'm not going to say why, but you've probably had more exposure to the Disney Plus experience than I have, and I thought I'd pick your brain about it.
Well, it works fine. What would you like to know?
Is it good? I honestly don't know. Like, is it worth 20? Is it $20? Is it worth $20?
It's $9. It's much cheaper. Netflix is $20. So we're talking 4K subscriptions only. Netflix is $20, Stan is $15, and Disney Plus is $9. So it's the cheapest 4K option. It also has the least content.
Unless you like High School Musical, the series.
Well,
which I don't think you do.
So I mean, if you want, like, if it's right in your wheelhouse and like you're a big Star Wars fan, so they're all here 4K for the first time. If you're into all the Marvel movies, they're pretty much all there. If you're into The Simpsons, it's all there, and it's going to be fixed with the proper aspect ratio next year.
Yep.
So some of it's still okay. Most of it's not actually that broken. People are overreact about that. There's only a few episodes. There's a little bit of Nat Geo stuff, but probably not enough. And then there's all the Disney stuff. So if any of that really tickles your fancy, I think it's probably worth trying. Whether I keep it long term, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Like, I kind of like the idea of having all the Marvel movies and stuff, but like, if you wanted to watch all of those movies, you would need 3 weeks of your life to get through phase 1 and 2 or whatever they're up to right now. And like, I'd almost feel better buying the DVD and having it in case I wanted to at some point. Good news though, like today being Wednesday, they've added resume, continue watching, and watch list functions, which at this point in a streaming service, you kind of think that they should be there from day one. And I guess some of those things were from day one, but they went weird and they had to take them out of the service and then add them back in. I don't know.
I suppose what I noticed straight away when I lost that is there's barely any TV shows on Disney Plus, whereas Netflix is like all TV shows. So everything on Netflix is new episode coming up right now. Whereas Disney Plus has, Mandalorian, Simpsons, probably a couple others, but it's pretty much all like Marvel movies is its main thing. So you didn't need it as much. Yeah. And maybe that's why they didn't think it was as important. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep. If you're going to watch all 30 episodes of all seasons of The Simpsons, and you definitely shouldn't, but if you wanted to, you have to remember which episode you're up to. So that wasn't working. Good on them for adding a basic feature.
Where's the cutoff time in The Simpsons? Like, where you should watch from like season 1 to season...
Purists will probably tell you like season 8. I think up to like 12 is still good. Not as good, but it's still pretty good. There's quality in there. And then 13 onwards it gets pretty rough. Don't watch after that.
I still watch South Park, and I'm not sure why. Like, some are really, really good, and some are really, really, really bad. But anyway,
I think...
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, pick and choose. If there's like a celebrity you like and they're in an episode that's in like season 25, maybe watch that one. But other than that, don't watch the whole thing.
Except the Michael Jackson episode
is in it.
Yeah, for Michael Jackson, they cut his episode.
Yeah, that's true.
But if he's your favorite celebrity at this point, you've got problems.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't.
Well, and he wasn't officially in it. He was not credited. So.
Oh, that's right, because he ended up being like the big dude, big bald dude.
Yeah, and he
kind of like child predator, which is accurate.
Yeah. Well, often celebrities play a different character, but they get credited. He didn't, and I might be wrong about this. Classic Friendly Fire show, no facts. But I believe at the time, no one knew if it was him or not. It was like, this is pre-internet days, because it was a 90s episode, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah,
pre-internet, people just speculated, is that Michael Jackson, because he wasn't credited, and I didn't confirm it for a while afterwards. So But now that we know it is, they've cut it entirely.
And now they're trying to deny it and they pretend it doesn't exist, which is fine.
Yeah, it was never him.
I might give. I don't know. I'm watching The Mandalorian, and I don't know how much Disney Plus costs, so I don't know what more I can say about that. Streaming services, we've talked about this before. Like, we have Stan now, and I'm not sure why we have Stan still, because RuPaul's just finished, and that's like literally the only thing we watch on Stan. I have Amazon mostly for Twitch and Twitch Prime, but like Star Trek Picard's coming out on that in January, so I have a reason to watch Amazon Prime Video again. I'm kind of getting sick of the streaming services, and it just seems like we're getting more and more and more and more. But yeah, I think we've beat that dead horse to death already.
We've covered that. Let's swing back around to games, shall we?
All right. Well, how about we talk about the thing I went to? I can't say it though. X019. X019?
Is that what you say?
It's like 2019,
it's
but the
badly.
X is a 2. The 2 is an X. XO. Well, people are saying XO, or it's X019. X019, because it's a year, but with an X. Anyway, that thing. I went to the Microsoft end of year thing that they used to do in London a while ago, and they shuttered it for a while. They brought it back last year in Mexico City, and this is its triumphant return back to the UK in London. It was held at the Copper Box Arena. It was actually really, really cool, and I got to spend like a day before the announcements checking out some stuff and doing interviews. So I talked to Phil technically before, well, like not technically. I talked to Phil like 3 hours before they did the live stream that evening in London, which was like something in the morning in Australia, right? It was pretty early.
Yeah, it was like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., something like that. So
by the time the next day in London rolled around, it was kind of like get some assets, write some stuff, and then fly home. So it was totally worth it. Some of the bigger things were that Microsoft announced a couple new pieces of IP. The biggest one is the most vague, I guess, announcement that they had. It's called Everwild. It's the newest game from Rare, and it looks kind of like Gods and Monsters, and we don't really know much about it. I don't know if you're across it at all, if you had any feelings on it.
I saw the 20-second trailer. All I can say is I hope it's a single-player game. No offense, Sea of Thieves, but just go back to what Rare used to do well. Yeah, I really don't know what it is, but hopefully it's quite different to Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, well, and we don't really know much about it, and I forget anything I wrote about it because I did that at like 4 a.m. when I was jet lagged in London. The other big announcement that they had is a game called Grounded, which is by Obsidian. It's not a new Obsidian game. It was in development before Microsoft acquired Obsidian. It's being worked on by a team of 13 who are working on it basically at the same time another Obsidian team was doing The Outer Worlds, and there's obviously another team at Obsidian that's doing whatever's next for Microsoft as the first official Xbox Game Studio game. And Grounded is, I had a chance to play it at X whatever it's called in London. It's a combination of Minecraft and like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I guess. It's a co-op first-person survival crafting game where you're like a really, really short child running around through blades of grass, fighting ants and ladybugs and aphids, collecting materials and crafting items to kind of survive in this world. And like, it's decent enough, but it's definitely not for me. Like, if you say a game's about crafting, I usually check out pretty quickly. And it's that kind of Sea of Thieves mentality of like, get together with people and just explore and have fun. Like, not for me, but it's certainly a game. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out or have any thoughts on it.
I have not seen anything on it, but you've really made me want to steer clear of it. It doesn't sound like my type of game either, but you've not sold it at all. So I think I will avoid that. Is it multi-platform or is it?
Sell it? No, it's just
Xbox.
Yeah, and so like PC and Xbox.
Yeah.
It goes into game preview in April or May or so in 2020, and it's a Game Pass title. The first Game Pass title that's in a preview program, like early access state. So news for that and that alone. So yeah, like it's Microsoft's. They got it when they acquired Obsidian, but it was being developed before the acquisition.
Yep.
The other kind of thing, it was called Project Speed in all the pre-event stuff that we were getting under embargo, and we were thinking, you and I, that it was maybe Forza Motorsport 8. It's not. It's a game called, oh god, what's it called? Kart Racer Drift. Something like that. Schnups. I'm going to look up the name and make sure I'm saying the right thing. I'm pretty sure it's something like that. Okay. Kart Racer Drift. It's a game that's been out in Korea for about 15 years. Giant player base, and like something that none of us have heard of at all. It's called Kart Rider Drift. It's basically Mario Kart. And it's actually quite fun. The drifting is the only thing that's very different if you're equating it to a Mario Kart. The drifting is very aggressive, and like it drifts. Your turn in the drift is far sharper than you'd expect it to be because it looks and plays otherwise like a Mario Kart game. Power-ups, shortcuts, just, like the only difference is it's not licensed by Nintendo, so you're not playing as Princess Toadstool and stuff. It's just generic kart racing people. It was actually pretty fun. I don't know if I desperately need a kart racer in my life, but it's pretty fun, and it's, considering its appeal and its audience in Asia, it's a fairly big win for Microsoft. I don't know if it's going to do a lot, but PlayStation doesn't have it, so that's something for Microsoft, I guess.
A smart game to have on Game Pass, because it's the type of thing that it probably wouldn't sell that well, but if you just have it there, people would play it. They think, oh, what can we play that's multiplayer? Hey, kart racer. So
is it on Game Pass? I can't remember.
Surely.
It may or may not be on Game Pass. We'll have to check. There's a list of 50 titles that have been confirmed for Game Pass that you can go and look, and I'll put it in the show notes. I can't remember, to be honest. It might just be a game coming to Xbox.
Oh,
I don't think it is, but I don't know. There was so much going on. It's published by Nexon, so I don't know if it is.
Okay, scratch that. This game will fail horribly. Should be on Game Pass.
So some xCloud stuff we could talk about. Do you know much about it? And you can talk while I quickly look up if this Kart Racer Drift is on Xbox Game Pass or no. How comfortable do you feel?
It probably isn't. What are you talking about from xCloud? I know that it's not coming to Australia anytime soon. We've established that.
Very true.
Otherwise, I don't know that much about it. I've tried it. I think we talked about it last episode or the one before. And we really wanted to see what the difference was between xCloud and console streaming. Because, of course, if you have a console at home, you can just stream your own games. And that is what you and I are going to do because we already have all these games on our Xbox that make sense to us. So I was interested in their answer to, I believe you asked them, why would I use xCloud if I have console streaming? And what did they say to that?
Good vamp, Ben. Can confirm that Kart Racer Drift is not a game that's been confirmed for Game Pass. So thank you for buying me some time to look that up. To answer your immediate question, it's basically things that you can do and you might not ever use one or the other. So if we're talking about Australia and you and I, and hypothetically xCloud and console streaming are available in this country, which they are not, you with NBN would likely just use Project xCloud all the time because that's just reliant upon a decent internet connection. You can connect to the games in Game Pass, where most of them will be available to you, regardless of whether or not you own them specifically or individually. Game Pass games are also part of xCloud now, so like if you wanted to play something, most likely you have access to it with xCloud. You just need to have enough download on your device through whatever network you're on, home or 5G, to play it, and you're good to go. With the console streaming, the library differs a bit. It's just the games that you have access to play. So if you turn on your Xbox right now and looked at your library, those are the games you can stream. Plus like Game Pass and stuff, obviously, because you have licenses for those. But the big difference is your home network will have to have enough upload bandwidth to project the game into the cloud, essentially, for then you to pick up and start playing wherever you are. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Because that's the big difference.
That's exactly what I thought it was. So I think on my NBN, I can cover that.
It's such a confusing piece of technology, though. Like, I had to ask that question to really fully understand it and have it explained to me in that level of detail. Like, it's kind of obvious once you think about it, but I don't know who's thinking about it to that extent, if that makes sense.
When they announced it, my first thought was console streaming is going to be free. It's going to be if you've got a game on your console at home and you have the ability to upload that, you can stream it no cost. xCloud, everyone will have to pay for. So that is what I was thinking the main difference was going to be. But they haven't announced any pricing at all, so we really don't know, as far as I'm aware.
They were really, really cagey about any kind of business model talk. Like, to the point where, like, we had it like a group Australian interview and they just kind of like avoided the question entirely. Other things we learned, it's in trial right now in the US, the UK, and Korea. The UK is using it the most. And I think that's probably just because Korea has probably faster internet, but less people using Xbox. But the UK uses it the most. They use it in the evenings the most right now, between 6 to 8 p.m. Australia, they're just really not telling us when they want to launch it, but they did announce a whole bunch of new regions, including Canada, India, Japan. They will get the Project xCloud preview in 2020, and they'll extend the xCloud preview to other devices, including Windows 10 PCs and other devices in bracket or in air quotes. They didn't say what those were. And as you'd probably expect, kind of a no-brainer question and answer, but I did get them to confirm that eventually, in the course of the xCloud timeline, they will take out the Xbox One S consoles in the server racks and eventually replace those with Project Scarlet. So as, Xbox evolves, so too will Project xCloud. You'll be able to stream, from the then current gen systems, as opposed to, like the current gen system that we're going from now. If that makes sense. Project xCloud is really cool. I had a chance to play it. I think you did it at E3 as well. Is that right? I think so.
Yeah, we played it, but under very controlled conditions, so you didn't really know. But it worked fine from what I played.
So I was playing on a 5G connection with Vodafone. I was playing on a Wi-Fi, like, separate network to the public one that they had in the theater. It played, like, I played for like 2 or 3 minutes at a time, so you can't really tell. But I played Gears 5 and Overcooked 2 on different network scenarios, and it was really, really good for like 98% of the time. On the Wi-Fi playing Gears 5 near the end, there was a little bit of input lag that was starting to kind of happen, but I kind of equate it to, and you probably do this too, you've used the current home network streaming system on your Xbox probably once in a while, or no?
Very briefly, I've tried it, but I've never really used it regularly.
I occasionally do. And like most of the time it works really, really well. And like if my network kind of just like lags out for a second, like you can notice some input lag. And it was kind of like that. Like for most of the time it's really good, you'll be fine. And like occasionally it'll kind of just drop out a bit. And like if you're playing and are like super dedicated in like a single player thing, that's probably just when you hit pause and then like flick up and down the pause menu and see when it kind of catches up and you're good to go again. Then you unpause and keep playing. So like I don't think it's a huge, terrible thing. And really, like, if you're at home and you just want to play on your Xbox, play on your Xbox. Like, don't use Project xCloud if you don't need to. But it's kind of like a cool little idea on top of the normal Xbox offering. And that's kind of what Phil Spencer was talking to me about. Like, it's not meant to replace anything. It's meant to, what's the word I want? Like,
it's meant to add to it.
Yeah, that's not what I wanted to say, but that's exactly the right mentality. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. It's meant to be like this, part of a general Xbox offering. Which I'm quite keen about. And if you look at something like Stadia, which has been released now in a couple regions, it's tanking. Like, it's just getting shat upon. So, and it's because that's it. That's all you have. And, you know, they promised 4K. Hardly any of the games are even streaming into 4K. And then Google's now said it's the developer's fault, not Google's fault. It just seems kind of like a mess.
Yeah. Well, and there's hardly any games. So good luck to you.
And you have to buy them to then play them. And you probably already own them on a different platform. Anyway, yeah, it's garbage. Other stuff from X019. Age of Empires 4, I had an interview with Shannon Loftus, who came down to PAX Oz a couple years ago. She's now head of World's Edge Studio, which is the studio that's going to be looking after the Age of Empires series. Not super keen on the Age of Empires games myself, but some cool tidbits if you are. It's set in the medieval times. It was briefly considered to be kind of like propelled into the future and into space. But World's Edge has decided that it's like a historical game and meant to kind of tap into history. And obviously there's no history. Well, there's not a lot of history in space. The other thing is they haven't ruled out an Xbox release on console. It's primarily a PC game, but with every other Xbox game, you know, being released at launch on PC and console with Game Pass, with Play Anywhere, it looks like they're starting to kind of think about how that's going to work. I don't think there's a release date, you know, even being considered for the game yet. So I would wager by the time it comes out, you will be able to at least play with keyboard and mouse on Xbox One. But that's a bit of speculation. Moving on, because you don't care. Which is fine.
I don't care, but what I do care about is how is Play Anywhere going to work next generation?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I missed the entire hashtag Tuesdays with Phil thing. So we had about a 25-minute chat. It was supposed to be a 20-minute chat, and I got an extra 5 minutes because Phil and I are like besties. We've published 2 things so far. The first is, as you were talking about, and it was basically your question again. So thank you, Ben. How does Play Anywhere work? And since you've read it, you asked the question, you could probably describe it, and I can take a break from talking.
Well, yeah, pretty much. What I wanted to know is at the moment, Play Anywhere is for most Xbox first-party games. You buy it on Xbox, you can play it on Xbox or Windows 10. When we moved from last generation, if you bought a game on Xbox 360, you had to buy it again on Xbox One, and your save didn't carry over, your achievements didn't carry over. If you played a game, I think there was a few. There's games like, I can't think of any first-party ones off the top of my head, but there was stuff like Black Flag, which came out a month before on 360. You had to play the whole game, and then you get it again on Xbox One, and you have to start again. What a drainer that was. So it made sense to think there's going to be a big cross-gen period. What's going to happen next generation with Scarlet? Are we going to have to buy games again, or is it going to be one game across Xbox One, Xbox Scarlet, and PC? So Phil didn't give you a definitive answer, but he said that's their aim pretty much, is to have your entitlements carry over, so you have the license to a game, you can play it on any of those 3 platforms, assuming it's released on all 3, and your saves and achievements will be one centralized point as well. So he's only talking first party, of course, but if third parties wanted to do that as well, that would make things a lot more user-friendly moving to next generation compared to the last one where it was really anti-user. It was kind of incentivized you not to buy a game late in the console lifecycle.
Yeah, oh, and the criticisms that you put upon the transition between 360 to One, I didn't have to get into that with Phil. He brought that up himself. He's like, yeah, I didn't like how we did it. You should be able to just get all your entitlements, all your achievements, everything that you bought on the last one to come across to the new one. And you can see that that's obviously what they've done with Play Anywhere and with all these systems since the Xbox One was released. And he didn't confirm it. He said that's their aim. But I would be very surprised if they don't follow through on that by the time we go from One to Scarlet. So that's super big news, and I'm really excited about that. People who aren't excited about it include people on the True Achievements forums, as an example, people like me who really like their achievements. Where
one set of achievements now.
Well, yeah, if there's an easy game on One and on Project Scarlet, you could play it twice and get 2000 gamer score, where now it looks like it's going to be, especially with first party, that it's one save, one continual process. And we're talking about things like third party. As a good example, CD Projekt Red said that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to come out in April on current gen. It's going to eventually come out on PS5 and Scarlet but likely after the launch of the consoles. So we're talking, like 6, 7, 8 months between releases of the game. It'll be interesting to see if they decide to take this kind of user-friendly approach, where if you have an Xbox One save for Cyberpunk, it could flow into Scarlet, so you can just kind of pick up where you left off, or if they're going to make you kind of start again from scratch.
I think,
and there's pros and cons to each.
Yeah, I think that depends on, do they call it Definitive Edition or not? Because that means buy it again, start again. If they don't do that, then they could, let you carry over, and that would be much better. Aside from the true achievement trackers. But yeah, it'll work the other way too, because we're thinking about moving up to next generation. But how many people are going to buy 2 new consoles at the start of life? Probably not many. But if you have 2 TVs, a lot of people do. You might have, a main TV and a second one, just in case your kids, your partner, whatever is using one, you want to play Xbox. You may be able to play Halo Infinite on Scarlet and then go and continue on Xbox One in another room. Like, the back way will really work out well as if it works like that, I think.
Big time. If I get a new console, I'll probably have it upstairs in my office, in my work area, and we might just have the Xbox One X downstairs for a bit. So, it'd be nice to transition between games. Like Halo Infinite's a good example. Halo Infinite is definitely going to come out at launch day on Xbox One, PC, and Scarlet. And if you have any combination of those platforms anywhere, at work, at home, at a friend's house, like, you will be able, theoretically, if this goes through, to just transition between all 3 as if it was just, like one device, which is cool. I really like that.
That
I can
is
play with you.
Losing 1,000 gamer score. So
definitely. And if you have friends who are still on current gen but you're on next gen, like, theoretically you'll get cross-play and cross progression and stuff, so you're not limited to, like the early adopters who have Scarlet and who had the, like, I don't know, what do you think it's going to cost? $600 to $800 to $1,000 to spend on this console.
Yeah, 700 is my guess.
That's a lot of money. The other thing we talked about so far with Phil, and there's lots to come, I'm just drip feeding it like a seasoned pro. In 2016 in Sydney, I asked Phil if VR was going to come to, it was Project Scorpio at the time, what we now know as Xbox One X. And he said at the time it felt like demos and experiments, so he wasn't really keen on VR. Speaking to him at London this year, he said, I feel bad calling them demos and experiments. Like, VR games are good. They're their own little niche. But it's not what I want for Xbox, and it's not a focus. He thinks VR games are very isolating. You put on all this gear, so you can be immersed in the VR-ness, but, like, you're cut off from the rest of the world. So it's not about kind of, like, gaming for everyone and gaming with everyone. He also did bring up that, like, they're not selling hand over fist in terms of, like, VR headsets and stuff. So he doesn't like it as a kind of experience. He doesn't think it's selling well. It's not a focus for the future of Xbox, at least right now. And I think I agree with him. Like, I don't want to play VR. I'm loathing the having to put on the headset and the headphones and grab the little, like, hand tracking devices and then sit down and hope that you're, like, lined up properly. And if not, you got to take off all the headsets and readjust. Like, I want to sit down and play a game and relax and just, like, have a controller in my hand, be done. And VR to me is just, like, so much extra work for little return.
Yep, Phil is on the money here. No one wants VR. Spot on.
Yes.
I think there's people have fun moments with it. It's very much that motion control, iToy Connect type of thing that you play it a couple times a year. You show people who don't normally play games. I think, well, that's cool. And that's it. As you say, you can't be bothered getting home from work, sit down on the couch. Oh, I've got to put all this whole thing on to play VR for a game which isn't any better, really. Like, once you pass that initial, this is kind of cool moment, the games aren't better. So yeah, I don't want Xbox to go into that, and they don't have to. So I'm glad they're not. Good work, Phil. And
agreed.
Also, as we just said, if you're going to buy a $700 console, the last thing you want to have to buy a $600 headset. So yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, and I haven't verified the numbers, but I've seen people say that the current PS VR install base is 4 million. which seems like a big number, but then like you equate it to the amount of people that had Kinect, and that was 10 million people that had Kinect, and Kinect seemed like a fad. I'm not sure why we haven't equated VR to a fad as well. Like if VR was a Star Trek holodeck where it like you were actually immersed and you could still engage with the world without like a million peripherals on your face, I would be all for it. But it's not. It's like it's a very niche kind of gimmicky thing, like 3D TVs like that came and went before you could even like blink really. So I'm not sure why VR is kind of still struggling along.
Same thing.
Good segue into
4 million of 100 million. So it's actually not that big, really.
Well, Valve didn't get that memo because they've announced Half-Life Alyx. After what, like 15 or so years? That's probably too many. After a giant gap between Half-Life 2 and the Half-Life that we still don't have, Valve has decided that Half-Life Alyx is going to be basically a Valve Index device and selling points, fully 3D or not fully 3D, fully VR. It probably is fully 3D if you're in VR. Shut up. Full length game. And I think people would rather just have Half-Life 3, but I
could not care less. I don't care. Whatever, Valve.
I agree.
It's sell this dodgy VR thing. I don't care. So,
like if you like Half-Life and you want to like strap yourself in, good, more power to you. But I don't know. Like VR to me always seems like a gimmick, and like my favorite VR experiences have been Star Trek Bridge Crew, the Batman one by Rocksteady. Just like things where you get to like have this really short kind of like dream fulfillment of being the Batman or being on the bridge of the Enterprise. Like I don't want a 15-hour experience. And I think a lot of people just get sick from VR as well. Like there's so many things that just make me want to not play VR, to be honest. And even having a new Half-Life game, not that I'm like super sold on Half-Life as most people seem to be, like that's not a selling point. It's not a big enough selling point.
No, I think a lot of people will see through that too. So yeah, if anything, they probably wasted their moment. At some point they were going to announce a new Half-Life. They've not called it 3 on purpose, but I think they've already lost if they ever do come back with 3 now, which they probably won't, the moment's gone. They've wasted it on VR.
Well, and they were saying in interviews that they find the prospect of Half-Life 3 too daunting. And that's like, why admit that? Like we've hyped up this franchise, this narrative that had an open ending that clearly needed resolution, and we're too scared to resolve it. This is decidedly a prequel set between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, but I think it was Polygon noted in the trailer there's a line in the trailer that is one of the last things spoken in Half-Life 2. So it could be a bit of a prequel and a bit of a continuation of the story, and that seems like a cop-out as well. Like if you're gonna, continue the story, or at least confirm that you're working on a proper sequel, maybe outside of VR as well, but whatever.
Well, it's VR only, so I'll never play it and I will never know.
Valve's making money hand over fist, so they don't care. Probably the coolest thing about X019 that I had a chance to very slightly interact with was a new game from Don't Nod, who are the developers of Life is Strange, and obviously Life is Strange 2, which is concluding on the 3rd of December, and I'm very excited about that. I think you're pretty keen on at least Life is Strange 2, Ben?
I am, yes. I have not played episode 4 yet. I've been meaning to go back to it. It's in my pile I need to get to, but yes, I will get there before episode 5 drops very soon.
Well, I reckon play it on the 2nd and the 3rd. Just get it all done in one big hit. I really like Don't Nod's games. They're very different from a Telltale game, even though it's that kind of same structure of like the episodic kind of choose your own adventure style game. I feel like there's a lot more interaction with a Don't Nod game as opposed to kind of just like choosing A or B in Telltale. But anyway, Don't Nod introduced or announced their newest game. They're partnering with Microsoft, or Xbox Game Studios, I should say, for a PC and Xbox One release of a 3-part episodic game called Tell Me Why. And kind of like the big talking point about it is that it has what they believe, and I think they're right. I haven't found any other game that contradicts it. It's a game with the first major transgender protagonist that people will play as. So you play as identical twins who were both born as females. One has transitioned into a transgender male, and it's working through their relationship, their shared memories, and assumedly kind of the journey of one character to where he is now. And if it wasn't Don't Nod, I would be kind of alarmed. The other big thing about this is that they have gone on record on consulting about the game from the get-go with GLAAD, GLAAD, which is like an American-based LGBT group, and I should have probably researched a bit more. But if GLAAD's behind something, you know that it's in good hands. So they have consulted Don't Nod and Microsoft both with GLAAD on creating a transgender character and trying to make it an authentic character, and the play experience as authentic as can be. And I'm not going to spill too many details, but I had a pretty lengthy chat with Phil about it. And even his journey from the start of the experience to the end, you can see him learning a lot and him kind of understanding a lot more than he did to start with. So I'd imagine a lot of people that Don't Nod and Microsoft had that same kind of experience, kind of like having an idea and then fulfilling it properly. And GLAAD's gone on record, I don't have the quotes straight like offhand, but like GLAAD's happy with where they've landed with this character. I watched the trailer after reading about it, like 10 hours before. I watched the trailer for the first time at the actual Inside Xbox where it was announced, and I had like just tears streaming down my face, like, which is stupid. And I'm kind of like tearing up thinking about it. I'm super excited for another Don't Nod game in general. I'm super excited for the way that this seems like it's going to present itself, which may or may not be what you think, Ben, because you might be a little bit a little bit more removed from it than I would be. But it seems like a really cool project, and I'm excited to play it.
Well, I really like their games, so I like the character development they have, and yeah, I've liked the two so far. I do wonder when they make these though, is like I know with Life is Strange 2, they make it like a TV show. They release episode 1, and they're nowhere near finished episode 2, let alone 3, 4, 5. So that's probably the most intriguing thing. It sounds like this one's a lot further along before they've started releasing it. If Phil and people have gone through a fair bit of it.
This one confirmed will have all 3 episodes drop at the same time. So the entire game will be released at once. So thank you for reminding me.
There you go.
Yeah. 3 parts, but all at once. Yeah, which is kind of like, why not just make it one game? But whatever. You do you.
I guess it's because it's how you play their games. They make them story-wise as to be like 2-hour snippets. You're not meant to play it as a... It'll
be like the television arc of like arcs. That's like the arcs. That's not what's the thing in TV? How do they describe those? It's not arcs. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Stories.
They're very planned. They're very punchy, and they'll have like a cliffhanger to take you into the next one. And maybe it's a good place to stop for the night, or maybe it's a good place to keep going. Seems really cool, and I'm very excited about it.
Cool.
That comes out in mid 2020, I think. Something like that. Last, because we're almost going to hit an hour, Ben. We never do that. The Game Awards nominations came out. Stevivor is, of course, one of the 80 worldwide outlets who get to weigh in. But, of course, viewers have the ability to vote on things as well. But we sort of talked about nominations before. They're officially released. We've already voted, but we can't obviously talk about our nominations specifically or our votes specifically. But some
who is nominated for Game of the Year?
Sorry?
I assume you have this in front of you. Who's nominated for Game of the Year?
I've got the nominations. I was rambling, wasn't I? Game of the Year, okay. Control, Death Stranding, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Resident Evil 2, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, and The Outer Worlds. So, some pretty AAA games. I don't think
All AAA.
it's realistic to expect an indie game to get voted for Game of the Year, to be honest. But
No, and so the reason I would say it's not going to happen ever is because, as you said, there's 80 outlets who nominate and then vote. And frankly, it's the whole outlet's perspective, and not just one person. We should mention. And just the indie developers and publishers. Well, you can't have a publisher for indie, so indie developers, they just don't have the time and the scope to go to all those outlets and make sure you have access to the game. Whereas the AAA publishers have done that, and it's not that we're avoiding them; it's just that we don't have infinite time and infinite resources, so we have to only look at what we've played. And yeah, that's a big part of it.
And we can nominate between 3 to 5. So trying to get 8 people to decide upon that many games, it's a crapshoot to begin with. Other notable nominations: Best Action Game, Apex Legends, Astral Chain, Modern Warfare, Devil May Cry 5, Gears 5, and Metro Exodus. There's too many to name. Go look at the website for lists. I think the biggest kind of takeaway is that I think 9 nominations were earned by Death Stranding, which caused Jeff Keighley, the host of the Game Awards, to kind of go on record and say, like, I have nothing to do with nominations. They were chosen by the outlets. It wasn't me, even though Kojima's like my bestie and I happen to appear in Death Stranding, which is pretty fair enough.
I'm in the game. And also, would you like Monster Energy drink? Oh, hang on. Too early.
Have you watched Ride with Norman Reedus? It'll be interesting to see what happens if Death Stranding takes away a whole bunch of the awards. Like, I don't know. It just seems like they'll need to somehow like prove that it wasn't impacted in any way.
I'm sure it isn't, but
I'm sure it's not, but like it's going to raise a lot of questions.
Other awards don't have kind of like one guy who's the host and the facilitator organizing everything, and then also have that person being something nominated. Like, you don't have that one person do all those jobs or anything else to begin with. But then, you don't have him as the star, basically, of something.
And how often has he pulled Kojima into the Game Awards to have these like long, like introductions and presentations about Death Stranding? It seems a bit strange, but like whatever. We'll see how it goes. We voted. We've done all we can do. You as listeners can go to the website and click on the link with the nominations there and vote on your favorites. I think the jury weigh in a little bit heavier than fan votes, but you're certainly able to vote and kind of at least feel like you've helped sway things. And we'll see how it goes on the 14th of December.
We will.
Yeah. We'll hear more about Half-Life Alyx then. Raf Colantonio's new studio. He used to be at Arcane and did things like Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and Prey. His new studio is going to announce their first game. There's a bunch of stuff going to happen, so it'll be interesting to see what goes on.
It's always the last big announcement of the year. So yes, Kojima's nearly always there, but they do normally announce a bunch of stuff. So it's always you kind of think it's awards, but they normally have a few trailers and a few new things to show. So yeah, there's stuff that's worth watching, even if you don't care who wins, because there's interesting stuff for what's to come.
Yeah. Let's be done. We're almost at an hour, and that's so unlike us. Where do we find this episode? Exactly. Where do we find the stuff that you do on the internets, Ben?
You can find me on Twitter at Ben_Salter. That's where I am at the moment. And yourself?
SWrightAU, but you hear a lot about Stevivor, Stevivor, because we'll keep putting out the Phil stuff, and it's getting picked up by everybody, because apparently we know the good questions to ask the gaming elite. So
Phil just likes you, so he's giving you the good stuff.
Kabam. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with me, Ben. It was fun.
Always a
We need to do it more often. Yeah. Maybe another one before the end of the year, maybe not. We'll see how we go.
Maybe. It's a wild lottery being subscribed to this podcast. Just anything can happen.
It's just like it's a surprise. You should be happy that you get a new episode. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye.